feel? Dirty South, dirty, can y'all really feel? I got the East Coast feel, West Coast feel. Dirty South, dirty, can y'all really feel me? East Coast feel. Say what?
Hey beauties, welcome back. It's me, Lydia Marie. Welcome back to the channel. Today, you guys, we have quite a detailed video. So grab your pen, your pencil, grab your makeup tools, and make sure you follow along. I'm going to give you some of my top tips to help your makeup look a little bit better. While makeup itself does not have rules, it does have some guidelines that you can apply to your makeup application and just really help your makeup look a little bit more flawless. So we're going to cover all the bases from foundation to skin prep, even some eyeshadow and some lip products. So if you would like to see some of my tips to help your makeup look a little bit better, especially if you're a woman over 40, I hope that you will keep watching. If you're new here, hi, I'm Lydia Marie. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing. And this video again will be detailed, so make sure you grab your pen and paper and follow along. Let's go ahead and get into some of these makeup tips. First things first, we want to talk about is hydration and prepping your skin properly. No matter what your skin type is, anytime you apply makeup, you want to make sure that your skin is properly prepped. So go ahead and do your regular skincare routine, but you always want to follow up with a moisturizer. Like I said, whether you have oily combination or dry skin, hydration is always going to be key. Since I have normal to dry skin, I'm going to be using my Bobbi Brown Vitamin Enriched Face Base, and I like this because it is serving as a moisturizer and a primer in one. It's nice and emollient, but it doesn't leave my face feeling super slick, so my foundation will not be slipping and sliding all over the place. So I absolutely love this Bobbi Brown Vitamin Enriched Face Base. And then under my eye, I'm going to be using the Vitamin Enriched Eye Cream, and I put my eye cream on about 10-12 minutes before I put my concealer, again giving my eye cream enough time to absorb so my makeup doesn't slide all over the place. Tip number 2 is about your brows. You want to make sure that you fill in your brows when you're doing your makeup, whether you have naturally thick brows or naturally thin brows like I do. My brow routine is minimalist because I do have naturally sparse brows, but what I've been using lately is a brow gel that kind of holds my brows into place. So after I spoolie my brows and just kind of make sure the hairs are all going in the same direction, then I take some of the Got To Be Glue brow gel. It's like a holding gel, and I just run that through the shape of my brows, and that just ensures that the shape that I have combed them into or used the spoolie to, that it's in place. After this dries, then I go in with my complexion products, and after my foundation is on, then I will go in with my brow pencil of choice and just kind of trace the line of my natural brows to fill it in to mimic the brow hairs. I'll show you that when we get there, but you want to start with shaping your brows before you do your foundation. Next in my routine, and what I think helps make my makeup look better, is that I go in with a primer. I like primers. A lot of people don't. Some people would just say that their moisturizer is good enough for them as a primer. Personally, I think of primer as painting a wall. You don't want to just slap a coat of white paint on a wall without filling in any imperfections or any dents or anything like that. That's how I think of a primer. So I like to use a primer to just kind of set the tone for my makeup to lay better, to look better, and make it last. Today I'm going to be using the NARS. This is a light reflecting primer. You guys have seen me use this when I use the NARS foundation, but I'm going to use this today because the foundation that I'm using is hydrating and gives a radiant finish. So I'm going to use about that much, and I like to focus my primer in the middle of my face where my makeup tends to separate, around my smile lines and on my cheeks where I have the most texture. And this is where you can go ahead and apply your primer, and again, you want to let it sit for a good 30 to 60 seconds before we move on to your foundation. Now for the fun parts, we're going to move into foundation. When it comes to complexion products, my biggest tip is to layer. It is always good to add more versus adding too much at the beginning and trying to take it away or tame it down. So with my foundation, you'll often see me pump it on the back of my hand, and I'll take 1 to 2 pumps depending on the foundation. Today I'm using my Givenchy Prism Libre, and we're going to use this as a foundation. It's going to give me a nice radiant finish, which is why I use that NARS foundation, or sorry, the NARS primer. So I'm going to take 2 pumps. This pump is broken on here, so I'm trying not to squirt it all over my dress. I'm going to take like 2.5 pumps. on my hand. And this way you can warm up the foundation a little bit. You can either rub it in with your fingers. You know I hate doing that. I'm going to buff it with my brush on the back of my hand and kind of spread it out. And this way it also distributes on the brush a little more evenly, so when you apply it, it applies in even strokes. So when I apply it, I like to kind of pat it in first and then buff it like so. I always forget how good this foundation is until I wear it. OMG. Of course, everything will be linked down below, but I always like to pat first and distribute it and then go in and start to buff. I do both. Some people go in and buff, but it just depends. I do both. But this way it gets nice and even over the side of your face. You don't have any streaks or any patches that you're missing, anything like that when you're applying your foundation. I like to work it on one side of my face, then use the rest for the other side. And this foundation has a nice medium buildable coverage. And so I take it down. Oh, and yes, the next tip is make sure you are blending, honey. You want everything to be seamless. You don't want color. You don't want your foundation to start right here. You want to blend it back and blend it down. I'll show you on the other side as well. Again, just taking it, blending it, patting first, making sure the coverage is how I like it. Let me see if I can get you guys a little closer. Patting first, getting the coverage how I like it, and then buffing. And in that way, you're just making sure, like I have my hyperpigmentation patch right there, so you're patting in the coverage where you need it the most. This is what I like to do. And I'm patting around my mouth. And then I'm going to buff it in the same way I did before. All the way down and all the way back. And whatever's left on my brush, that's what I use on my forehead and down my nose. Next, I like to take a damp beauty sponge, not wet, just damp, lightly dampen, and just kind of tap in that foundation to make sure that it is nice and blended, especially in areas around my mouth where my brush doesn't always touch. But I want to make sure that the foundation is not sitting on top of my skin, and this ensures that you're just pressing in the rest of the product. And you can see a little bit there, so it blended really well because it's not picking up a lot of product. I just like to go around where I blended it, not picking up any product or anything, just kind of pressing it in and making sure it's nice and blended. Moving on to concealers, I'm going to do the same process, though I do like to take my concealer and just swipe it. But again, we're going to work in layers with concealer as well. So I'm going to do the same technique, put the concealer on the back of my hand. I'm using both of my shades from MAC, the NC42 and the NC27, and I'm just going to mix and match those on the back of my hand for my under eye concealer. Again, this is the MAC Studio Radiance concealers. I love them. I've been raving about them. Love these concealers down. I'm going to take this concealer brush like so and do the same technique. Just kind of swirl it together on the back of your hand. This is a really good tip for women over 40. If you have, like I have, where my fine lines are on my face, they're under my eye. A really good tip for not caking on that concealer and for it to be minimalist creasing. Or is that the word I'm looking for? Minimal creasing, that's the word I'm looking for. So taking it on a brush. So once the concealer is on my brush, I'm going to tap right here. And I learned this trick by listening to a podcast from Sir John, and Sir John is Beyonce's one of her makeup artists, and he said if you have mature skin, you want to look down a little bit when you're applying your concealer and powder, and look down like this to make sure you're getting into those lines. So Sir John said it, so I'm gonna do it. And I like the way this concealer applies. You can control it a little bit more, and so I tap mine into place and then build upon the brightness that I want and the coverage that I want, like so. Looking down, making sure I'm getting it not right under my lash line, but like right underneath for the brightness and the coverage. That concealer is so good. Let's do the same on the other eye. I didn't have to add any more concealer on the back of my hand. I just took what's on the brush, swirled it in, and we're gonna do The same here. If you need more, feel free to add more on the back of your hand, but I'm going to use what I have and then kind of add to. It's always best to add to instead of trying to take away. I'm going to do the same thing here. Take a small damp blending brush, no girl, not a brush, not no blush, a small damp sponge, and tap around the perimeter of that concealer. Before we add powder, we want to make sure the concealer is blended, because if you add powder while your concealer is still damp or it hasn't had time to absorb into your skin, or it wasn't properly blended, it's going to move the product around, and that's where the creasing and the discoloration is going to peek through, and we don't want that. So now that we have the concealer on, I like to do my liquid blush at this point because we're going to use 2 blushes. I'm just going to add that right under my concealer like so, and we're going to blend it in. You know, I've been loving this trick where your concealer is nice and your blush is right underneath your concealer, and it just gives you such a nice little flush. This is the e.l.f. Camo Liquid Concealer in the shade Pinky Promise, and I'm using the wrong brush, child. Hold on. I'm like, why is that so dense? Here it is. This is the brush I need. A little fluffier, because I don't want this is not going to be the primary blush, but I like it. And another tip is to make sure, especially if we're over 40, we want to lift. So blend everything up, not blending everything down. But this is just giving me like a glow from within type of blush routine. I've really been liking this. So now we're going to move on to powders. Before we add anything else, we have a finishing powder here, which is the MAC Mineralized Skin Finish Powder. This is the powder that I apply all over to kind of lock in the cream products, the foundation and everything that I have. And this is my setting powder that I like to use under my eye. You guys know I like a bright under eye. You can also use a powder that is closer to your complexion. It's completely up to you. Either way, a little bit of powder goes a long way, especially as we get older. You don't have to stop using powders, but it's just about your placement, the type of powder you use. I like a powder with a radiant finish, which is why I like the MAC Mineralized. And I also love, you guys know, the Sephora Micro Smooth powder. This Maybelline Fit Me powder, super duper expensive. Oh, super duper inexpensive. And I've been liking it to set my under eye. I just take a little bit on a brush and pat it into my under eye. This powder will serve as my under eye setting powder, brightening powder, and it won't cake or crease because I'm using a brush. If I was using a sponge, like my triangle sponges here, these give a little bit more coverage under the eye, but I want to go keep it nice and light and radiant. And though this powder is matte, it's not completely mattifying when you use it with a brush, which is why I'm just taking it and tapping it. Again, not right underneath my eye, but right around the perimeter to set that concealer. Make sure it does not move and give me a nice highlight. And then with the finishing powder, I go in with a powder brush, swirl my brush around like so, tap, tap, tap. And then I just go in and lightly buff it in the areas where I applied my foundation, mostly on the perimeter of my face, just to finish it off and give my face a nice airbrush look, which I love. Y'all can tell I like a nice airbrush look because I keep saying it. To recap so far, the first tip is your skincare, making sure you're prepping your skin. The second tip is to get your eyebrows in order, shape them, fill them in however you do your brows. They are going to frame your face and really set the tone for your makeup. The second tip is to work in layers when it comes to your liquid, foundations, concealers, etc. You want to work in layers. I like the trick of blending on the back of my hand and then applying to my face versus applying directly to my face. It just helps the makeup spread a little more evenly, and then you can control the coverage and the finish of the makeup a little bit more. Powders, you don't have to stop using powders. I like powders personally. I don't really do my makeup without them. I like a good powder because for me it really just gives you the finished look. I use a bright one under my eye and a powder that is like hydrating, not hydrating, but like a mineralized radiant finish all over my face. Next tip, we want to spray our face down. Next up, I like to go in with a setting spray, and you would think a setting spray is the thing that's going to set your makeup into place, but these recently that have been released, they're acting more like a hydrating in between steps type of spray. This one I've been liking to use as a setting spray just in between my makeup to give me some hydration and start to melt all the products into my face. So we use the concealer, the powder, the liquid blush. I'm going to spray my face with this. Let that sit for 30 to 60 seconds. This product, something like this that has oil in it or hydrating properties, is really going to help the makeup melt into your face. At the end of the application, that's when we go in with a fixing or another setting spray that has properties to lock the makeup in. The Urban Decay All Nighter, the Morphe setting spray with the aerosol, the Charlotte Tilbury. These are the products that are going to lock the makeup in and help them not move. Eyeshadow follows the same principles as layering first. I like to go in. You can do the traditional eyeshadow look, which I always like, which is the color closest to your skin tone in your crease. And then the darker color out here, something shimmery or lighter on the lids. It's really up to you. A lot of people have just been using bronzers as high as your eyeshadow. Totally up to you. Or you can just swipe a bright shimmer on your lid and call it a day. I'm going to be using my well-worn Anastasia Beverly Hills Soft Glam 2 palette. I'm starting in the shade Incense, and just a little bit of brown in my crease, and that's really it, just to add a little bit of dimension to my eyes. A little bit goes a long way, and just using a fluffy brush and blending with eyeshadow. That's the key. That is the key to eyeshadow. Forget everything else I just said. Blending is the key for your eyeshadow. So my eyeshadow looks, they don't really change. They haven't much. I don't do like a crazy cut crease anymore. Even when I wear color, I still do like the same application. It just works for me in my eye shape. I know it's pretty boring, but it looks good every time. It still works. I'm just adding a little bit of shimmer here. And you don't have to do shimmer. You could just do the brown and keep it moving. But yeah, that's it. This is my favorite palette. Can you tell? And they still make it, thank goodness. So it will be linked down below. This has not been discontinued. Y'all know Anastasia loves to discontinue an eyeshadow palette, but this one is still available. I'm gonna use this, and I like the bronze more often than I like the contour because bronzing mimics the sun, so it brings warmth back to your face. I especially like the bronze in the colder months because it mimics like I've been out in the sun. I'm gonna use the e.l.f. dual-sided complexion brush, and I'm gonna take it in the same way. We're just gonna do the 3 motions. So here, here, here. 1, 2, 3. And that's the easy way if you're new to bronzer to kind of get the bronzer in place. It is a very old school trick. I know the newer girls be like, you don't have to do that, but work with what's working, okay? It still works. It's still a good trick for a reason. And start there, and then if you want to build up more, feel free to build up, but for me this is enough powder bronzer. And we're going to round it out with some blush. Blush is also one of those things that you can build up, and I think it's best to do so, especially if you're using a good powder blush. This is the Pat McGrath. This is the shade Desert Orchid, I believe. This is one of her Venus blushes. I'm going to use a blush brush, and I'm going to tap it right where I had that liquid blush. Y'all heard that term blush blindness? The girlies are saying, if you wear too much blush, you have blush blindness. Whatever. More is more, okay? You know me and blush, we locked in. But you can also follow the natural contours of your face. I like to give myself a little bit of lift. But again, work in layers and just work slow. You can always add 2. And you see how that just gave me a nice flush of color compared to here. It didn't muddle up the bronzer. It didn't mess around with the liquid. It's just nice and complimentary. Build in layers. It's all good. You guys know I don't wear lashes much at all. Like rarely ever do I wear lashes. I'm a mascara gal, but I also have sparse baby thin lashes. Always have. So this has been my bestie. My good old fashioned $5 eyelash curler is going to help your eyes open up a little bit more. When you curl your eyelashes, they help it open up a little bit more. The mascara applies more evenly. A lot of people don't like these. They're like, I don't want to poke myself, but it has a nice little padding here, so it's not going to hurt your eye. So you just want to get up in your lash in the middle and clamp it and hold it for about 10 seconds or so. Curl your lashes before you put on mascara. That's the tip. Moving on to lips. One thing I like to do if I'm wearing a lipstick all day, especially one that's a little more satiny versus matte, is I'll take my same powder brush without adding any extra powder, and I'll just kind of around my lips like this. And that powder is like the setting powder or the fixing powder on your face. Is going to help that lip product adhere a little bit more. That is also an old school makeup artist trick as well. So lip liners, yay or nay? Yay. Yay. I don't know why y'all be out here wearing bright lips or lips liners, new lips with no lip liner. I don't understand it, but as for me in my house, we do lip liners. Lip liners are good for helping not just shape the lips and making sure that your lipstick doesn't bleed. It adds shape. It lets you know where you can put the lipstick. It just like outlining before you paint. Think of it that way. So this is why we have lip liners. Lip liners, like a slip. You need your slip on, you need some lip liner on. I'm using the Charlotte Tilbury. This is the naked, not the naked, what's this? Pillow Talk Lip Cheat in the shade medium. I'm getting Urban Decay in that mixed up. Lip Cheat. And I had on lip balm, but right before I put on my lipstick, again, especially if it's satin, I have on lip balm while I'm doing my makeup, and then I wipe it off right before I put on my lipstick. That way the lip product is not slipping and sliding, especially the lip pencil. And I'm just tracing the natural contour of my lips. Sometimes I'll overline the top because my top lip is thinner than my bottom lip. And then doing the same here. And then filling it in the corner. And then apply your lipstick. And that's going to help your lipstick last longer and look better, really shape your mouth, really highlight your lips. Yeah, so I gave my face a final spritz with my fixing spray just to lock everything in and make sure my makeup has longevity. So those are pretty much my tips for making your makeup look a little bit better. I think this look came out really well. If you want any more information about how to make your makeup look its best, feel free to hit me up. If you want an eyeshadow tutorial, make sure you let me know that in the comments. I'll be glad to do that. I love eyeshadow so much. And it's fall, so we need to play around with some color. If you made it this far in the video, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. I thank you guys so much for tuning in. Every single thing will be linked down below. As I said before, don't forget to click those links. You'll see everything in the description box. Thank y'all so much for supporting my affiliate links. I truly appreciate y'all. And I'm going to see y'all back here for my next video real soon. Bye.